There is an old idea, almost forgotten now, that what you give away never really leaves you. It just changes shape, moves through other hands, comes back to you eventually, often as something you didn't expect and couldn't have planned for. This is a story about a man who gave away a third of his harvest every year because hoarding it felt wrong to him. And the woman who arrived in town with nothing but a plan, a trailer, and a fence line that happened to run alongside 40 acres of apple trees. This is The Orchard at Miller's Bend. The Orchard at Miller's Bend. A story about love, generosity, and what grows when you give freely. The apple harvest in Miller's Bend always came in the last 2 weeks of September, and for as long as anyone could remember, the Whitfield orchard had been the largest in the valley. It sat on 40 acres at the edge of town, rows of trees planted by 3 generations of Whitfields, the oldest of them gnarled and silver-barked, the youngest still slim enough to bend in a strong wind. Eli Whitfield had inherited it from his father 6 years ago, and his father had inherited it from his father before that, and the inheritance had always come with the same unspoken instruction passed down the line. Take care of the orchard, and the orchard will take care of everyone else. Eli had taken this seriously in a way that sometimes worried his accountant. He gave away more fruit than most orchards his size sold. Crates to the church food bank, bushels to the school for their autumn festival, a standing arrangement with a women's shelter 2 towns over. Whatever they needed, no charge, no questions. He didn't advertise this. People in Miller's Bend simply knew it, the way you know which house has the friendliest dog or which road floods first when it rains. His mother, before she passed, used to say the orchard had a wide heart because Eli had given it one. He didn't think of it that way. He thought of it as obvious. You had more than you needed. Other people didn't have enough. The rest followed. Hannah Voss arrived in Miller's Bend on the first Tuesday of September, driving a car with out-of-state plates and a trailer that suggested she intended to stay longer than a weekend. She had bought the old Pemberton place on the edge of town, a tired farmhouse with good bones and a barn that needed more work than the listing had admitted. She was 34, recently divorced, and had spent her savings and most of her courage on the decision to leave the city and try, for the first time in her adult life, to build something slow and her own. She knew nothing about farming. She had a business background, a clear plan to start a small batch preserves company, and an optimism that occasionally outran her actual resources. She did not know, when she signed the papers on the Pemberton place, that the back boundary of her new property ran directly alongside 40 acres of apple trees. She found this out on her second morning in town, when she walked the boundary fence with her coffee and discovered Eli Whitfield on a ladder in the tree closest to the property line, picking apples into a canvas sack slung across his chest. "Morning," he said, glancing down. "You're the one who bought the Pemberton place." "I am," Hannah She looked up at him, shading her eyes. I didn't realize I'd have an orchard for a neighbor. Best kind of neighbor to have. He climbed down, wiped his hand on his jeans, and offered it to shake. Eli Whitfield, if you ever need apples, you just have to ask. Save yourself a trip to the store. She laughed, a little surprised by the directness. That's generous. It's just apples, he said, in a tone that suggested he genuinely believed this undersold nothing. She took him up on the offer within the week, not for eating, but for an idea she'd been turning over since before she'd left the city. She found him at the orchard on a Thursday afternoon, sorting fruit into crates with a methodical rhythm of someone who had done this every September of his life. I want to make preserves, she said, without much preamble, because she had learned that small talk wasted time she didn't have much of. Apple butter, chutneys, maybe a cider jelly if I can get the recipe right. I have the equipment coming next month. What I don't have is fruit or money to buy it at retail. Eli looked at her for a moment, then at the crates around him. Easily more than he and his small crew could process before some of it went to waste, the way it did most years despite his best efforts at distribution. What if I gave you the seconds, he said. The fruit that's too bruised or odd-shaped to sell fresh, but is perfectly good for cooking. I throw out about a third of my crop every year for cosmetic reasons alone. If you can use it, it's yours. Hannah blinked. Eli, that's most of what I'd need. Then it's settled. I can't just take that for free. Let me pay you something, even a token amount, just so it's fair. He considered this, not because he disagreed, but because he was the kind of man who took fairness seriously, even when generosity was his instinct. Tell you what, he said. First batch, you bring me a jar. We'll call it even. That seems unbalanced in my favor. I have 40 acres of apples and nobody to share the seconds with most years. You're solving a problem I have. I'd say we're square. She studied him for a long moment. This unhurried man with dirt on his hands and an offer that cost him nothing to make and meant everything to her timeline. Okay, she said. 1 jar, first batch. The first batch took her 3 attempts and 1 minor kitchen fire to get right. She brought him the jar on a Sunday in early October. A small batch cinnamon apple butter, the label handwritten because she hadn't ordered proper ones yet. He opened it on his porch, tasted it straight from the spoon, and was quiet for a moment in a way that made her nervous. This is good, he said finally. Genuinely good. Not neighbor being polite good. You don't strike me as a man who'd be polite about food. I'm not. He took another spoonful. My grandmother made something close to this. Hasn't tasted like it in 20 years. He looked at the jar, then at her. You should be selling this at the Harvest Festival next month. The whole valley comes through. Best exposure you'll get all year. I don't have a booth. I don't have inventory. I have 1 jar that took 3 tries and nearly burned down my kitchen." "You have 5 weeks," he said, "and a neighbor with more apples than he knows what to do with." What followed was, by Hannah's later account, the most productive 5 weeks of her adult life. Eli brought crates of seconds to her back fence every few days, more than she'd expected, exactly when she needed them, with the unhurried reliability of a man keeping a promise he hadn't technically made. She spent her evenings testing recipes, her days building a small production process in a kitchen that increasingly smelled of cinnamon and clove and slowly caramelizing sugar. He started staying when he dropped off the crates. Not long at first, a few minutes, leaning against the fence, watching her work through the kitchen window, offering opinions on flavor combinations he had no formal right to have opinions about, but turned out to be correct about more often than not. "More nutmeg," he said one evening, watching her stir a pot of spiced chutney. "Your grandmother teach you to cook?" "My grandmother taught me to bake. The cooking I'm learning as I go." "It shows, in a good way." He paused. "Determined way." She looked at him over the pot. "Is that a compliment, Eli Whitfield?" "I don't give compliments I don't mean." She smiled and added more nutmeg. By the 3rd week, he wasn't just dropping off crates. He was staying for dinner. Simple things, the kind 2 tired people make at the end of long days, eaten at her kitchen table that still had sawdust in the corners from unfinished renovations. He told her about the orchard's history, his grandfather planting the first rows after the war, his father expanding it through decades of careful, patient work, the unspoken family instruction that had shaped every decision Eli had made since inheriting it. "Doesn't your accountant get nervous giving so much away?" "Every year," he smiled slightly. "I've had the same conversation with him for 6 years running. He shows me the numbers. I tell him the orchard's never gone hungry from generosity. We agree to disagree, and he keeps doing my taxes." "Why do you do it? The giving away, I mean. Really?" He considered the question seriously, the way he considered most things. "My mother used to say, the orchard has a wide heart because somebody has to plant it that way," he said. "I think she meant, you can hoard what you have until it spoils, or you can let it move through your hands to where it's needed. The fruit's going to rot one way or another if it's not used. Might as well be useful on its way out." He looked at her. "Besides, watching what you've built these 5 weeks, that's a better return than money ever was." Hannah didn't say anything for a moment. The kitchen was warm and smelled of apples, and something in her chest had gone quiet and full at the same time. "You didn't have to do any of this," she said. "The crates, the advice, tonight?" "No," he agreed. "I didn't." "Then why did you?" He looked at her steadily. "Because I wanted to. That's usually reason enough, in my experience." The Harvest Festival came on the 2nd Saturday of October. Hannah had a booth, small, hand-painted sign, 60 jars of 3 different preserves lined up on a borrowed table. She had not slept properly in 4 days. She had also never been prouder of anything she'd made with her own hands. Eli came by early, before the crowds, and looked at the table with the satisfaction of a man watching something he'd helped grow finally bloom. "You did this," he said. "You gave me the apples." "You gave the apples a reason to matter." He picked up a jar of the cider jelly, turned it over, read her handwritten label. "This is going to sell out by noon." It did, in fact, sell out by 11:30. All 60 jars gone to a steady stream of Valley residents who'd heard, the way news travels in small towns, that there was a new preserve maker worth trying. She had to take orders for a second batch on a scrap of notepaper because she hadn't thought to print anything. She stood behind her empty table at noon, slightly stunned, and found Eli watching her from across the festival green with an expression she hadn't quite seen on him before. Something unguarded, something that had stopped pretending to be only neighbourly. She crossed the green to him. "I sold out," she said. "I know. I watched the whole thing." "I couldn't have done this without your apples." "You could have," he said. "You'd have just done it slower, with someone else's fruit eventually. I just happened to be standing close enough to help." "I'm glad I was." She looked at him for a long moment. This man who gave away 1/3 of his harvest every year because hoarding it felt wrong to him, who had handed a stranger 5 weeks of his fruit and his evenings and his honest, unhurried attention without once asking what he'd get back. "Eli," she said, "I think I'm in love with you. I wasn't planning on saying that today, but the words got crowded out of my mouth before I weighed them properly." He didn't look surprised exactly. He looked like a man who had been hoping for permission to say something himself, and had just been handed it ahead of schedule. "Good," he said, "because I've been in love with you since the second crate delivery, and I was beginning to worry I'd have to keep finding excuses to bring you apples until Christmas." She, startled and full and real, "You could have just said so." "I'm a patient man," he said. "I figured the truth would come up in its own season. Most true things do, if you give them enough time and don't rush the soil." They married the following September at the edge of the orchard, under the oldest tree his grandfather had planted 70 years before. Hannah's preserve business had grown enough by then to need its own small building, a converted shed at the back of the Pemberton property, fitted out with proper equipment and a sign that finally wasn't handwritten. She kept buying the seconds from Eli's orchard at the same arrangement they'd started with, though now neither of them pretended it was a business transaction. It was simply how the two halves of their life had always overlapped. His trees, her jars, the steady exchange of what one had too much of for what the other needed. At the wedding, his accountant gave a short, slightly bewildered toast about how Eli had somehow turned giving away 1/3 of his harvest into finding a wife, and that he, for one, was recalculating his entire understanding of return on investment. Eli's mother would have laughed at that, Hannah thought. She would have said it was simple. You plant a wide heart, and eventually, something worth keeping grows back toward you. That was, in the end, exactly what had happened. The orchard kept its trees. The town kept its crates for the food bank and the school and the shelter 2 towns over. And at the edge of 40 acres that had given freely for 3 generations, 2 people who had learned to do the same found that what they'd given away had somehow, quietly, made room for everything they needed. The end. And that's where we leave Eli and Hannah, married under the oldest tree in the orchard, 2 halves of a life that grew together because one of them never stopped giving freely. I think that's the real lesson in this one. Generosity isn't about having enough to spare. It's about deciding that what moves through your hands matters more than what stays in them. If you know someone with a wide heart like Eli's, someone who gives without keeping score, tell them today. Let them know it matters. Share this story with someone who needs the reminder that kindness always finds its way back around. Subscribe for a new story every week. I'll see you in the next one.